serial killers are your sons, we are your husbands, we are everywhere, and there will be more of your children dead tomorrow. This is a quote by Ted Bundy. Today, I will inform you of one of America's most infamous serial killers. So everyone in this room has seen some kind of criminal or crime show like NCIS or Law and Order SVU, Dexter, Criminal Minds, and I personally have spent hours not only watching those shows, but studying about Ted Bundy, as well as watching several of the documentaries about him and his life. So today, I will talk to you about Ted Bundy's childhood, the heinous murders he committed, and also his escapes from authorities. So first, we will discuss Ted Bundy's childhood. His childhood started off pretty rocky. He was born November 24th, 1946, but he was born out of wedlock. Now, his grandparents told him that they were actually his mom and dad, and that his mother was his sister. So the majority of his early life, that's what he thought, was that his mother was his sister. And this is just because to get kind of away from the stereotypes of, I guess, being born out of wedlock back in those days. So, but he found out the truth later by actually coming across his birth certificate and seeing his mother's name on it. So he was actually, he resented his mother pretty much then on out from his childhood. It is rumored that his abusive grandfather is actually his biological father. Maybe you could put that together, that's kind of creepy there too. So his grandfather was also, like I said before, abusive. He pushed his younger sister down the staircase for oversleeping one time. So just grew up in a really rough household. Now, from a young age, he came off as a little sadistic. His younger sister, Julia, the same one that got pushed down the staircase, actually remembers waking up from a nap, and there were knives all around her, and she saw her brother standing there smiling at her, and he was only 3 at this time. Now, he was pretty distant throughout his teenage years, and I mean, needless to say, his childhood, he didn't really have a lot of people to talk to growing up. But he did start dating a girl in college, his first pretty serious relationship, and she ended up breaking his heart, left him for someone else. And psychologists actually say this is probably the turning point for Ted. We're on first name basis at this point, because I talk about him so much. But they say that this is probably his breaking point, and the moment in his development whenever something started changing for him. Most of his victims actually resembled his college girlfriend, which I have a later slide that will show you kind of that comparison there. He ended up actually dating her a second time after they had broke up several years later, and they planned to get married, planned to run away together, were completely in love, and then one day he just didn't call her back. And she called and called and called and tried to get a hold of him, and finally, like 3 or 4 months later, got a hold of him, and she said, "What are you doing?" Basically, in other words, like, "Where have you been?" And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about," and hung up on her. And he admits later in interviews saying that this was actually his plan all along, to get back at her, like a revengeful get back, which lasted over several years. Her name was Stephanie Brooks, or that's her alias that he writes about anyways, is Stephanie Brooks. So if you ever see any information about that, then that's who he's talking about, is that girl. Doesn't ever say her real name though. So now I have talked to you about his early life. Let's take a look at our second area about his heinous murders. So, I'm sorry, that's Stephanie Brooks. Before we go to that, let's talk about this. That's her, but she's obviously blacked out there. And these are all of his victims, and they all had dark hair with their hair parted down the middle, and they all had a lot of resemblances of her. the murders. Okay, let's go to that one now. So he has confessed to 30 homicides. And these are all within 7 different states. There's supposed to be a map there of all of the states. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe it's on the next one. Nope. Will you go back one for me? Anyways, if you can imagine the United States here, he murdered in Florida and different areas around there. I can't tell you all the states because I didn't write them down. But he would basically befriend his victims and gain their trust, fake an injury, and then overpower them to murder them. He actually revisited their sites for 4 more hours, doing sexual things to them until it was not possible to be done anymore. And he kept several of their heads in his apartment during that time period too. So now that I've talked to you about his murders, let's revisit our third and final topic about the escapes from authorities. The first time he escaped, he was actually a lawyer or on trial for his own crimes. He was being a lawyer himself. He actually jumped out of a window and got away. He was caught 6 days later in a vehicle, taken back to prison. He was then escaped again 6 months later. This was a lot more time period or a lot longer planning, and he actually escaped. It was on for 6 more months.